So we've spent a large part of today discussing capital controls, and Professor Chari did a really good job explaining the motivations behind capital controls, the two of them being macroprudential regulation and protectionism. And protecting basically exporters, because exporting is recognized as an important growth factor for every economy. And one of the main empirical results for exporters is that exporters are better firms. They are bigger, they pay higher wages, they have higher productivity, and this result is very strong. It holds through industrial economies, developed economies, transitional economies, and even in our data set, just a basic correlation shows that exporters are much bigger, they pay higher wages, they have higher productivity in terms of TFP. And how this can be absolutely exploited by countries. And the story is like this. A domestic firm basically faces low competition. It has low demand for sophisticated products. But when it enters the world market, there is more competition. They can reap economies of scale in building sophisticated products. So the country can really do all sorts of things to push firms to export, because that will generate higher wages, more productivity, and that's the macroeconomic outcome we are interested in. Countries typically use a lot of export promotion policies, which include trade missions, different trade programs by the Ministry of Commerce. Then there's a large subsidy bill, which is due to, subsidy to exporting firms. Like we discussed in the morning, exchange rate undervaluation is done with the prime purpose of fostering exports, even though it distorts monetary policy. And capital account controls, then financial repression, all these are done to promote exports. On the basis of what? On the basis of a correlation, which is not a causation. And there could be three different causal stories running behind this correlation. The first is the Melitz model. The model says that more productive firms export. That is, they get self-selected into exporting, and the basis of that model is firm heterogeneity and sunk costs. That because exporting involves high sunk costs, only the best firms of the country can move on to exporting and survive in the international market. So that's the first model, which talks about self-selection. The second is learning to export, which says that some firms maybe make a conscious decision to improve their productivity before they enter the international markets, so that they can compete in the international market. And that is something we are calling as learning to export. The third is learning by exporting, which is that maybe over the years, as the firm begins to export, interacts with foreign buyers, and gets access to new technology, it learns. And it gains in terms of productivity. So that is what we are calling learning by exporting. So one or all three of them could be governing the firm performance, the performance of exporters. And without empirical evidence, we are at the risk of selecting inappropriate policies. So the purpose of this paper is to figure out which causal model holds. A brief literature review. So Wagner reviews 45 studies from 33 countries and concludes that more productive firms do self-select into export markets, but there is no conclusive evidence on learning by exporting. One would assume that the evidence for learning by exporting is better for developing countries because the availability of sophisticated products is less, and the chances of learning are higher because you will have flow of ideas from foreign markets. But the evidence for LB is also mixed for developing countries as for developed. The literature on learning to export is relatively new, and the literature finds that some firms invest in augmenting their productivity before they start to export. So they upgrade their quality, or they invest in capital, which improves the productivity. Coming to evidence from India, there are a couple of papers that look at both self-selection and learning by exporting. The evidence is mixed. So Malik and Yang and Ranjan and Ray Chaudhary do find evidence for learning by exporting, but Heather, Tabrizi, and Trofimenko do not find LBE gains. So in this paper, we develop on methodology and design, research design, in comparison to all other LBE papers. And the questions we ask are, the first is, do more productive firms become exporters? So this is the Mellitz model. Is there self-selection of more productive firms into exporting? The second question is, do firms augment their productivity before exporting? This is learning to export. The third, do firms experience a rise in productivity after they start exporting, which is learning by exporting? And fourth, do firms grow at an increasing rate after they begin to export? That is, are firms just adding factors once they enter the export market and not growing in terms of productivity? We use data for India. Now, India is a great lab because we observe both firms that transition into exporting and a lot of firms that never export, unlike a lot of developed countries. So the fact that we have a lot of firms that jump, so they are not exporting for a couple of years, they make a jump and then they export, that allows us to see both the pre-entry performance and the post-entry performance. And that is exactly what we are interested in. And the fact that we have a lot of firms that never exported allows us to compare the performance of these transition firms. And India is anyway a high growth economy and there's a substantial increase in exports, so it's an important evidence for an emerging economy set. So the key intuition in this paper is that we have pure observational data, it's raw material. We are going to construct a quasi-experiment to get causal effects. Okay, so coming to the methodology, the first important part of doing this paper is to measure firm productivity correctly. So if you use a simple Cobb-Douglas production function, the problem is productivity shocks and input levels are correlated. So we use a Levinson-Petrin estimate, which uses intermediate inputs as a proxy. And more details are in the paper as to what this methodology does. But while we are estimating this measure, one thing that we've given importance to is that every industry has a different production function. So we estimate TFP different by industry, by very narrow industry groups. And we also control for high and volatile inflation by deflating each industry by some industry-specific deflators. And lastly, we also demean the productivity values by their industry mean to make it comparable across industries. Over and above this, we also test all our results with 4 other measures of productivity. 2 of them are single factor productivity measures, which is just labor productivity and capital productivity. And one is an OLS residual. And the other is a proxy, which is profit to sales ratio. The second most important aspect of doing this paper is how do you define an export startup? So what is the purpose? We want to study a firm both before and after it starts exporting. So we want to observe the firm a couple of years when it's not exporting and then makes the transition and then stays on. So we define an export starter as somebody with what we call a 00111, where this is an export dummy, right? And this is how we define an export starter. So we get 473 firms with this very, very clean transition. And our constant non-exporters, which is a large set, 32% of our firms, that makes the control group. So we have a nice big treatment group with a clean transition, and we have a control group which never exports. Going on, the other fact is we want to compare like to like. So basic regressions show that export starters are inherently different from non-exporters. So that's the reason we use matching techniques to generate a counterfactual for each export starter. And we match on firm observables and check for good match balance. And I will reiterate this every time we look at the results. Another thing is that firm transitions are scattered across time. But we want a time-neutral result. For that, we use event study methodology, wherein we rescale the time at which a firm starts exporting to 0. So 1 is 1 year after the firm starts exporting, and -1 is 1 year before the firm starts exporting. And so we've matched the firm in, say, year 0, when the firm made the transition. Then the difference at +1 can be attributable to the fact that the firm is an exporter, and its counterfactual is not. So let's look at the results. First, we are going to focus on what happens before the firm starts exporting. So let's look at question 1, which is self-selection. So for this, the model that we use is, the LHS is a dummy, which is 1 when a firm begins to export, and it's 0 otherwise. And we control for the productivity, age, wage bill in T-1, and we also include industry dummies to control for the industry proclivity to internationalize, and year dummies for macroeconomic effects. The results are very consistent across all the 5 different measures of productivity. So, for instance, if you look at TFP-LP, export starters are more productive. It's a positive and a significant coefficient, are more productive than firms that never exported. They are also, export starters also pay higher wages and also are younger. This is all before the firm starts exporting, right? But, and this is something we see across all measures. But what is interesting is, is this difference in productivity a conscious effort on the part of exporters, right? And for this, we can, I mean, we looked at the trajectory of exporters, their productivity trajectory, but when you compare an exporter and a non-exporter as far as 4 or 5 years ahead of it beginning to export, they are very different. So to make a substantial claim, we need to do some matching. We need to reduce the variance. So we use Mahalanobis distance matching to match each export starter with non-exporters 3 years prior to entry. So in -3, we've got a set which will export going forward, and we have matched it to a set which does not export. And we use age, wage bill, size, productivity to match firms. We check for match balance using the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, which is a test for distribution. And this gives us 210 matched pairs. Looking at the result, so the solid black line is the difference in productivity of the treated firm minus its counterfactual. And this is, and the dotted lines are the 95% confidence interval. So we can see that the mean is not significantly different from 0 in any period prior to the firm, prior to the export starter exporting. So this tells us that there is no significant learning to export. And this is a result that holds irrespective of the measure of productivity used. Moving on to what happens after export entry. So in this case, what is very important is that we need to control for self-selection. In question 1, we established that export starters are much more productive than a non-exporter. So we need to control for this. And the way we control for this is by using propensity score matching. In this, the first step is we run a logit model to estimate the probability to export for both export starters and non-exporters. So we've got a probability for 2 sets of firms. Using that probability, we select a matching firm for each export starter using the, as in minimizing the distance between the propensity scores. But if the propensity score distance is much larger and we don't find anything very close to the propensity score of an export starter, we drop that firm. So even though we had started with like 470 export starters, we boiled down to 336 matched pairs, because for some firms we do not find an appropriate match. And a good match balance is much required to take the results seriously. So we establish good match balance by not just Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, but by standardized means, distribution of density plots. And so this is the summary stats for the matched pairs. Something that I want to bring your attention to is that the zone of applicability of this result reduces because, I mean, we are matching. And if you look at the wage bill, for instance, this is 50 million rupees. The average wage bill of the matched pairs. Now this tells us that, I mean, we've really reduced the zone of applicability, and this should be kept in mind. So it's really just the small and medium-sized companies for which this result will hold. Going forward, looking at the result, so what is the productivity premium after the firm starts exporting, right? Question 3. And we see, again, in this case, that there is no significant difference in the productivity premium of the export starter as compared to its counterfactual. And this result also holds with other measures of productivity. The fourth question is about firm growth. So we use the size measure, and if you can see this, there is a 1 billion difference by the end of 3 years between the export starter and the non-exporter. So essentially, to conclude, this, the main results of this paper are that more productive firms get self-selected into exporting. They are better, they are able to incur the sunk cost of exporting. But they do not learn to export. There is no conscious gain in productivity in the years prior to firm entry. The answer to question 3 is that firms do not even learn by exporting. There are no post-entry gains. And fourth, that exporters grow substantially in terms of size after entering foreign markets. So essentially, it looks like that the most productive firms are adding lots of factors, are becoming larger and larger in size. And what happens is when more productive firms enter the market, become larger and larger size, as their market share grows, there is reallocation in the industry, and that propels growth. That's the Mellitz model. So in our research design, that's what we find. Thank you.
So very few comments, and I think it's more questions for the authors than comments. It's not really what I work on. So firm exporting and productivity, we know that there's a very well examined topic in the trade literature, and one of the general findings, as the authors highlight, exporters are more productive than non-exporters. So do firms actually engage in learning by exporting, the LBE, that makes them much more productive? Or in other words, does exporting have a causal impact on productivity? Well, the LBE hypothesis states that it's actually cited as a basis for policy interventions. Actually, I enjoyed reading the paper because it's being set up very nicely. The motivation was very nice for someone who's not very familiar with the literature. And so the question is, whether does LBE hold? And the literature seems to be inconclusive. Then if you look at Mellitz's model, that's where the self-selection becomes quite important. As trade costs decline, only the most productive firms are in a position to expand, and they self-select into export markets. And where the less productive firms exit. And there's a literature that tells you that there is evidence for self-selection, which is strong, and the LBE hypothesis for developing economies, specifically mixed, and it's a nice quote that I found on the first page, which actually tells you that the rationale for policy interventions will be can be challenged if this is proven true. Now, the focus of the paper is self-selection LB, whether that exists in India or not. I just wanted to draw attention of the authors because I didn't find this paper in the bibliography. Probably you looked at it because they just did a nice summary like this in this particular paper that I cite there in the reference. Mukim's London School of Economics paper. It's not an entire table. It still extends to the second page as well. But anyway, so that paper seems to actually summarize neatly, and your paper I found was closest in spirit to this particular paper. So the novelty, they used Provis data, 94 to 2014, and the time period covers firms transitioning from domestic to exporting, and so it allows us to understand what analysis of firm productivity using the before and after framework, and that's very useful to understand that in that context, and they use propensity score matching. So I think all this is just summarizing what we already heard. So again, summary of the key results. Export starters are bigger, younger in age, better in paying higher wages, more productive prior to exporting. There's no conscious effort to improve productivity, and it has positive impacts on size, and there's no evidence of LBE, and it's consistent with Mellitz's model. So that's just a brief run-up of whatever was said already, right? So now, few comments on questions rather. The data is from 94 to 2014. Does it matter if you actually, or does the evidence still hold if you break it into sub-periods? I'm asking this because I know that there is this thing going about J-curve of productivity and growth. There's hypothesis about especially the Indian manufacturing going through a significant restructuring during this particular period, just before the financial crisis. So would that have any bearing on your results? I'm just curious to know if you did any robustness checks, or would that matter? Again, I wasn't very, please help me out here, but the table 2, I understand what the categories are, but but how are they used in the empirics? It wasn't very clear from reading the paper. And again, should be familiar with this. The question is whether this was tried out as another additional robustness check, because the two popular methods seem to be the Levinson pattern, which you've used, which uses intermediate inputs. And again, there is a bunch of papers which favor using the OP method by using investment as a proxy. So now the question is whether did you try it and it didn't really make any difference, or what is going on there. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the LP procedure, apparently when I just read up about it, it seems like it uses value-added data. Is that the case? Because sales rather than output and production is what is used. So I'm just wondering, some clarification will be nice. Then something about methodology again. PSM is great. I think it was nice to see that. And some papers just highlight that even they have problems, even propensity score matching. I think that's just fair to acknowledge that there are some limitations. I think one of the strong assumptions is conditional dependence, which just stands out, which is a very strong assumption. And also, again, endogeneity is like there everywhere in every regression. So that thing seems like it came up in some of the common criticisms, standard criticisms about propensity score matching techniques. So the question is whether that could just be acknowledged. It's a minor point. And this paper also, the one that I was referring to initially, seems to also do something interesting, which I thought would just be for your consideration, or maybe it's not relevant, you can correct me. It seems to do some within firm, I think it goes back to the previous point here, estimates provide the productivity differential between exporters and non-exporters with a given industry. But what about the within firm effect of exporting on productivity? Whether that was part of the question, whether it matters at all, I don't know, but that's just something that you could think about. And this paper seems to actually go in the direction. They try to use an instrument by using effective applied tariffs faced by exporting firms as an instrument, and it seems to be an interesting read. So just want to draw your attention to this. Some questions, quick questions. Any effects on financial constraints on exporting performance? Just curious. Are exporters able to get more credit during crisis, especially if export-oriented firms are less credit constrained than non-exporters? It will be an interesting thing to talk about. And then also, when we say exporters grow more than non-exporters, but there is no productivity increase, does it imply that they grow by increasing inputs, hiring more resources? Then can we tell, if that's the case, if they're more labor intensive or less than non-exporters? Since also you use wage bills rather than the number of workers, do we know if exporters actually hire more or pay higher unit wages? Just a query. And again, the policy part, I think it was still being developed. I would love to read more about it. I was very interested in that because if exporting leads to greater growth, and given the existing conditions in India, given the labor market rigidities, etc., that limit firm growth in many ways. So in the second best world, if we're living in, what would the policy suggestion be? That's just out of curiosity. It will be nice to read a little more on the policy front. I think these are some of the references, and I think I'm done. So thank you.